Let's welcome director Chris McKay.
Hi, guys.
Hi, Chris. You are so prolific and you won so many awards for your excellent work. And we want to ask you all kinds of questions about it, and the student will. But first, I wanted to know, how did you start in the business?
I started, as a kid, I made movies with my parents. My parents had like a Super 8 camera, and so I started making movies. I made movies with my friends, little horror movies, little stop motion movies, things like that. So I did a lot of that sort of thing. And then I went to school for film. I studied at Columbia College, and I got an internship on Uncle Buck, the John Hughes movie, and I got to sit there and watch, John Hughes and John Candy and all those guys make, Uncle Buck, and yeah, just wanted to make movies. So I did a lot of music videos, did a lot of commercials, did a lot of industrial videos and things like that, and then eventually got a job on Robot Chicken, and was able to
What kind of job did you get?
I was the editor. I started I guess they lost their editor as the first season was about to start shooting, and then I came in as an editor, and then pretty soon, because I can solve a lot of problems. I'd done every job on a movie set, from directing to producing to holding a boom to being a DP. So since I'd done all this stuff, and they needed somebody who could just come in there and kind of problem solve, because they didn't really have like a system for it, kind of like, not to get too into the weeds, but like all the writers were just sort of kind of coming down and directing. So the show had kind of like a real kind of like catch as catch can sort of thing. And we were really over budget. And I kind of just, pitched a few ideas that the producers liked, Matt and Seth liked, and as a way to kind of get the show kind of under control a little bit. And so I started directing and producing that show, and Moral Oral and Tight Maximum.
And so that's how you got into business. Okay.
Yeah.
So okay, and then you're starting to do those great animation movies. And the Lego movies. And so how did that happen? Because, this is like for our students who basically the path to where you can actually get to actually direct your own movie is kind of a mystery, unless you're in there and you start working for somebody and you start learning how it's really in the real world. So it's always kind of interesting how you get to that position. So in other words, so you're doing Robot Chicken, and now you're like in Lego movies that ended up $400 and something million. How did that whole transition happen? Because I want to know.
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone has their own path. I think the key is you never know what job or what thing is going to be the stepping stone to the next part of your career. It's just you have to take. I couldn't have gotten the Robot Chicken job if I hadn't edited a bunch of indie movies, sometimes for next to nothing, and sometimes nothing. I just wanted to work. I wanted to work on people's stuff. I wanted to learn, so I would do any job that I could, whether it was like I said, whether it was like being a DP or helping somebody produce something, or I think the key is to try to learn as much as possible, try to find the parts of the process that you really enjoy. I'm very lucky because I enjoy, there's aspects of every part of making movies that I really love. I really love pre-production. I really love working with actors. I really love in animation. I really love working with layout and obviously the individual animators and things like that. And then in post, I love sound. I love music. I love sitting down and just working with material. So, but I wouldn't have known any of that stuff. I wouldn't have, when I was in my, late teens, early 20s, like I wouldn't have known any of that stuff unless I had like just done things, and also watched a lot of people make mistakes. It's great to work on other people's stuff because you can see the stuff that they do really well, and you can see the stuff that they don't do well, and you can kind of learn from that. So especially being an editorial, where you're sort of at the end of the process and you can see all of the accumulation of people's, sort of like wins and losses. You can really learn a lot, and there's a lot of the psychology of making movies ends up in the editing suite, because you hear all the stories, you see all of the assumptions that people made going into something, and then you can kind of like help them. I think as an editor, you're kind of like a psychologist, and kind of like you play a bunch of different roles, but you can really, it is the third. I think Coppola famously said it's the third, part of the screenwriting process. You write a script, and then you kind of rewrite it on set, and then the final rewrite is post, and you can make something out of nothing. I've done that. I've done stuff where there's nothing there. The performances aren't there. The ambition is huge, but the budget isn't there, and you can find ways of like making something. So I think developing, I think if I could boil it down, it's like try to do as many jobs as you possibly can, have as many good relationships with people, everything. You never know, the PA on something I work on is going to be the producer on something else that I work on. Get to know people, like people, enjoy working with people. Love your fellow coworkers as much as humanly possible. Not the assholes, but like the good ones, like the real ones. But get to know people and learn how to communicate with all different kinds of people. If you want to be a director, you got to talk to everybody. You got to be able to talk to. You got to be able to talk to studio heads. You got to be able to talk to people who are the last movie I worked on was produced by a guy who's like a billionaire. So it's like, you gotta like you have to be able to talk to people up there, and you also have to be able to talk to the extras and the PAs and everybody, because they're all part of the movie. They're all filmmakers. They all want to be filmmakers. They wouldn't be there if they didn't on some level want to be in the film business. So you gotta be able to engage all different kinds of people and be successful at it. And so because people liked me when I was editing, well, first off, because I was editing other movies, I was able to get Robot Chicken because one of the producers had seen something that I edited. So she was like, this guy can cut. We lost our editor. Let's bring this guy in for an interview. Matt and Seth liked me. So I got the job. I was given 3 weeks to prove myself. And then I proved myself, and then I became the producer and director and all that of the show.
Yeah, you didn't sleep for 3 weeks and you finished the job.
Yeah. and then I while I was making, I think it was working on the 5th season of Robot Chicken, I got an opportunity to do a pilot at Disney. That was not something I wrote or worked on. It was basically like they had the Disney had something that they wanted to. It was kind of like an anime type thing. They always sort of flirt with anime, but they don't seem to never really seems to stick over there. But like, the show creator was making a very, for lack of a better way of putting it, like a soft show, and they wanted something that would appeal a little more broadly. So they brought me in to sort of help. And Disney, doing a pilot at Disney is great because they'll throw everything at it. They'll give you all the resources you need to try to get that pilot across the finish line. And I got to work with a production designer on that pilot that worked with Chris and Phil on Cloudy and a bunch of the Sony movies. And he told me Chris and Phil they were going to make this Lego movie, but they were also going to make 21 Jump Street, and they needed a third director to come in. And he thought that I would fit in with those guys because I'm kind of indefatigable when it comes to like trying to get something made and sort of like what it's like I've got a barn, let's put on a show. Like how can we get this thing off the ground? So I went and met with Chris and Phil, and they liked me, and they were off to New Orleans to make 21 Jump Street, and the Lego movie had lost its green light. So my job was to get Warner Brothers to sort of recommit to making the Lego movie while Chris and Phil were gone. And I had to, again, not to tell too many, not to go too into the weeds, but I think this is probably the conversation you guys want to sort of get into the weeds a little bit. But basically, like the studio had lost faith in the movie. Chris and Phil, they thought the movie was like a handholder movie. So their opinion was that this movie should be something for little kids, and that they didn't see it being they didn't understand why it needed to be a certain budget. They wanted to spend, you know, I don't know what, maybe back then, maybe they wanted to spend $20 million or something like that on the movie, which is like crazy small for an animated movie. And Chris and Phil, you know, and myself thought that, you know, we knew that this could be a bigger movie that could be for adults as well as for kids, that could be smart, have smart humor and dumb humor, and be fun and you know, and irreverent and all that kind of thing. So they basically had me, and they also kind of had lost a little bit of faith in the animation company a little bit. So my job was to try to corral all of those things. So I sat down with the head of Warner Brothers, who basically told me, like, why are you in my office? Who are you? I don't know. I hired 2 other guys to direct this movie. Why are you here? And I, you know, I said, I'm gonna basically try to figure out a way to get this movie, you know, pitch this movie back to you. And they said, his opinion was that they thought that I don't know the minifig around here, usually I do, but like, they thought the minifig design was not going to be suitable for animation. They thought their opinion at the studio was that it would not be, you couldn't get emotion out of it. You couldn't have a main character that was a 2-dimensional face with just, you know, dots for eyes and a lined mouth. And so they wanted depth in the mouth. They wanted anatomical features. They wanted teeth. They wanted a tongue. They wanted, you know, anatomical eyes. And for me and for Chris and Phil, we knew that, you know, this design, the Lego minifig design, it stood the test of time. So I basically came up with an idea where Emmett would have to audition for the movie, and that would be, we'd do an animation test where Emmett would have to come on and audition for the film. So we wrote a little script and basically did with Animal Logic, the company that ended up animating the whole movie. We did a little animation test where Emmett kind of comes into a black box, you know, auditorium, and he's got his sides, and is this where I'm supposed to be, and all of that kind of thing, and basically says that you hear me and Chris and Phil off screen saying, okay, say the line, now do it funny, now do it happy, now do it sad, now do it this, now do it that, now, you know, doing all this stuff so that we could show, like, you can get emotion out of this guy, you could feel sorry for this guy, you could, you know, you could empathize with this guy, you could be fun, you could do funny things with his with the animation of his limbs and stuff like that. The studio, not only did they not think that you could get away with the minifig design as a way to get emotion, but they also they wanted to do squash and stretch animation. They didn't think that we could do it in a stop motion, that there were stop motion the 6 points of articulation on a minifig. They didn't think that we could get all the animation you need to get to do a movie of that size and that level. So basically in that test where Emmett auditions, I did all the stop motion tricks that we do in order to, like, if Emmett was going to, like, grab across his body to do something, you know, in stop motion, you'd shave all this stuff down, you'd do sticky wax across here so that he could reach for something and then come back and that sort of thing. And so I did everything where, you know, I had him fall apart, I had him do all, you know, all that stuff that would be kind of things that we would do in the movie. So we did that. And then I also at the same time did a storyboard sequence that was a car chase. It's the Emmett and Wild style car chase from the movie. It was a different version of the script back then, but same idea. And did these really beautiful boards, or I didn't do them, but the team did some really beautiful boards that we colored in. We edited it really tight and put some Metallica music on it to show that, no, it's, and wrote a lot of jokes and did all this stuff. And so basically using those 2 things, I was able to get the studio to re-greenlight the movie. They saw, oh yes, it can be for adults, it can be for kids, it can be smart, it can be dumb. You can use pop culture characters to come in and do other things, make other observations and things like that. So then they were like, they were very on board at that point. And then the movie, and then basically I went to Sydney, Australia for a year and a half, and worked with the animation team and kind of reported back to Chris and Phil, and helped rewrite the, because we changed the script and sort of helped rewrite the script, and so yeah, I was the animation director, I was the co-director with Chris and Phil, I was the co-editor of it, because there's just like a lot of late, I mean, I worked like so many like 24-hour shifts on that movie just to get stuff done for screenings and things like that. So yeah, so I did a lot of heavy lifting to get that movie off the ground and into theaters, and worked up literally until like 3 weeks before the movie was released. And then I basically got Lego Batman. They saw that I was valuable, and gave me an opportunity to direct the next one.
Craig, you want to ask some stuff about animation?
Yeah.
About Tomorrow War later. Yeah.
The Lego Batman movie. It just seems to me like when I watched it, you used like every trick in the book to make that movie with stop motion and maybe like CG and everything else in there. Was an amazing blend. And so I was wondering, there were so many incredible set pieces. What were some of your biggest technical challenges in doing something that complex?
Yeah, I mean, there's many. I mean, it first started with just on the first movie, just trying to get that many bricks on screen, because the movie is almost entirely created in CG. There is little bits of stop motion in both movies, but very, very little. It was more trying to get the animation team to emulate a stop motion style. So I guess there's two things. One is trying to get the bricks trying to get the movie to be photorealistic, and that starts with the bricks. Starts to get with grime and fingerprints and dirt and the way the light hits the bricks and aging of the bricks and things like that. And to get that many bricks into all of the sets that we were doing, and make that stuff sustainable for the animation team and everybody who has to like carry these things from computer to computer and spin them around and put cameras on them and run all that stuff. So it's a massive lighting challenge, a massive texture challenge. And that's all kind of like the technical side. That's like the hard technical side of things.
Yeah.
And so that was constant difficulties on the first movie, on the Lego movie, and then on Lego Batman. We kind of, we obviously learned a lot on the first movie, so they sort of streamlined the process a little bit. But then I also wanted to add some more, some like water sims and other things like that to kind of fill out the world, and some smoke sims and that sort of thing. So it's integrating all of that and trying to make it photorealistic. On kind of the soft, kind of like that's like hard technical, like on the soft creative side, on the first movie, the biggest challenge was actually convincing the animators that animating it in a stop motion style would be something that would be charming and ultimately something that people would accept. I had a struggle with nearly every single animator on that movie, because they all had the opinion that this was going to be bad for their careers. The people were going to, all the people that, their friends or the people that would hire them for other things, they all thought that this would be, they wouldn't use this on the resume, because they thought it was going to look bad. They thought the movie was going to look bad, that this was not kind of the classic animation that they were used to doing. And so, I had a hard time. It was a lot of time trying to convince people to do it in a way that made it look like stop motion. So in Success, it's funny when you look back, and even I forget these things until somebody asks me, but like in Success, obviously everything looks like, of course, that's the right way to do it, because that's what we're used to. And that makes, that's what the toys are. And that's the way kids play and stuff like that. But at the time, people I mean, the amount of mutinies that I had to that had to you know, help people get their, you know, to chill out and kind of see the, you know, see the long game of what we were doing. And it really wasn't until we started like rendering out shots and that sort of thing for people to actually even see that there's still a charm there. But we were also, I mean, to be fair to the team, we were also rewriting that movie throughout the entire process. I mean, the whole ending of that movie, like I rewrote in the editing suite. You know, there was just a million things that we were up against, you know, really extreme deadlines for that movie. So especially for how long it took, because the studio dragged their feet in so many areas that we really had to kind of, you know, slam it together and even more slam it together in Lego Batman, because then in success, they all want that next movie. Really, they all want the, you know, we basically did Lego Batman in like 2.5 years or something, and started without a script. Like started with, you know, just like a treatment and that sort of thing, which is not the way to go for any movie, let alone an animated movie. But I knew I had a lot of confidence in my board team, I had a lot of confidence in the editorial team, and I had a lot of confidence in the animators who had stuck with the movie, because we had really developed a really great group of people who really brought a lot of love and care to the movie. And at the end of the day, I mean, again, it took people some time to come around, but they came around, and it was incredibly, you know, to have them on my side making Lego Batman at that point was it was the best, because it would have, you know, trying to get that movie out as fast as we did would have been a nightmare without having everybody kind of marching in the same direction.
Wow. Yeah, and in my opinion, is like it was the best movie of the year when it came out. It was so much fun. And just for me, like I'm a huge Batman fan, and also just all of the like for the Batman mythos, you threw in everything except the kitchen sink, or even that was in there.
Yeah, if Batman had a villain called Kitchen Sink, we would have put him in there.
Yeah, I think yeah. And it's like you drew from every realm of Batman there was, from the cartoons, the comics, the children's comics, and everything. Absolutely amazing. And I was just wondering what what were your influences for, like when you were a kid? You obviously must have watched Batman, or read the comics, and what were some of your favorite Batmans at the time?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I grew up, you know, kind of around like the Tim Burton stuff, and you know, I mean, I guess when I was like a little kid, like I'd seen, you know, Batman shows up on Scooby-Doo, and you know, the Adam West show and that sort of thing. So those things were around in, you know, I guess repeats or whatever, but like the Frank Miller Dark Knight Returns, the Tim Burton movie, you know, those are the kinds of things that were, you know, the Dark Knight Returns was a big deal for me.
I worked on that.
You really?
Yeah, I was in charge of the Penguins.
Oh wow, that's cool.
So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I love. I mean, I was just a big comic book fan, a big sci-fi fan, big horror movie fan. So I grew up, you know, sort of loving genre movies and that kind of thing.
Cool. Wow, that's well, I am so glad you made that movie, because it was just amazing, and it just hit on all the cylinders for me. I'm going to move on to Tomorrow War for a little bit, and also touch on something else that my background.
Can I ask him something?
Sure.
It's a very naive question from somebody who doesn't understand animation at all. Okay, so I watched Francis Coppola direct Godfather 2. And there were a lot of moving parts in terms of actors and this and that, whatever. And, you know, I would say it was chaotic set, but he was all calm through it. And my question is, is either in Tomorrow's War or in the animation, is there moving component on sets that are creating, sort of a chaos and you have to deal with it? Or is it all done after that in post-production with green screens or animation and so on and so forth? Is there an equivalent? Yeah.
Yeah, there is. It's funny. I loved your description of, it's like a lot of chaos on set, and that when you're on set in a live action movie, there is lots of chaos, and it sort of feels like, if some people sometimes ask me like what the difference between live action and animation is, and I think, probably it's similar to what you're suggesting there, is that in live action you can't control, you almost can't control anything, and in animation you can control everything, but you have to be very, very careful, because animation can get because you can control everything, animation can get expensive very fast, because you can literally control every single leaf, every little, how much life you want to bring into this thing. You can make that, you can change, the animation of every single element in the frame. It's just it just takes a long time. You have to be, you have to sort of pick and choose your battles, especially when you're under, you got a release date. But I think that animation, I think every filmmaker should do something in animation, because I really think that it's a great way to learn story. Because it's filmmaking, it's in slow motion on some level, because you are working on one shot, one sequence, and you are refining it, because you're starting in animatics, which is basically like storyboards that are edited together with some music and voiceover to just sort of get people to understand what the scene is, and kind of start to pick your shots and your angles and their durations and things like that. And you've got board artists who are really good with performance, so they're giving you some performance, ideas and things like that. But you're still dealing with the storyboards, basically, even though it's kind of edited together to sort of look like motion. You're basically doing storyboards. You it's pose to posy. Sometimes it's just like, just some silhouettes and some blocking, right? But then you move into layout, and layout, you got a camera in as rudimentary sets and as rudimentary, puppets, characters and things like that. But it's, but you can kind of like start to put your camera where you need it to go and all that kind of thing. And you start to understand a little bit more, like in Z space, where characters are going to move and how long it takes for someone to go from one side to the other or whatever. And then you go into animation. So you're refining each of these things along the way. And at the same time, you're obviously working in different areas of the movie with other shots and other scenes and that sort of thing. So you are kind of like it's almost like sculpture, where you're kind of going around the marble. You're working on a hand maybe over here. Now you're working on the eyes over here, and you're sort of taking the big shape and then kind of getting it more and more specific over time. So in that way, animation is a really, really, really great way to study story, because you start to sort of see, okay, I'm because you're working on all of these things, and you're starting to get into the weeds in some, but you're just, in the blue sky nascent stage on others, and you really start to see sort of like, oh, I don't need to tell this part of the story, because I'm learning. You're making editorial decisions on some level because of the epiphanies you're having in the process. So I think anybody who wants to be a filmmaker should at least try to do something. Try to do something in animation. I think it's a really great way. And then live action. I think a lot of the stuff that I did especially when you're doing a movie like Tomorrow War, which is a combination of live action and CG creatures. There's a lot to your question about like what happens on set when I'm looking at something. Sometimes there's a stunt guy, and there's like a 6 foot or 6.5 foot tall stunt guy that's got a head of the creature, and he's running around and he's chasing after actors or doing stuff. We had some animatronic stuff on set. We had some big photo dummies that we had around. Sometimes I'd have a stunt guy just go run around and do stuff, that the actors could follow and shoot at. And then sometimes it was sometimes I would have either the stunt guy with one version, whether it's the guy with the head or just a guy kind of running around. I would have them do a couple of rehearsals and maybe we'd shoot one, and then I would remove that sometimes and then just let the actors kind of go through, once they kind of got it down a little bit, because it becomes a dance. You got like sort of like a dance floor of what you're going to do, and then the actors would go through the blocking without the stunt guy there and kind of improvise stuff, because I like things, I like sometimes things to be a little loose, because I wanted to, especially in that movie, I wanted things to feel a little more spontaneous. So if they were, chasing people in the hall, if they're chasing white spikes or being chased by white spikes in the hallway or something like that, like I would just do stuff to kind of destabilize the actors a little bit, so that they'd kind of have to, kind of react in the moment, especially like when we're out on the street and I was having like the steady cam or, the handheld stuff chasing, where we had the edge kind of, which is a car with a camera on it that would kind of run around and get stuff. So, because I want stuff to feel a little more like, I wanted to feel like, if it could feel like Heat or Full Metal Jacket or something like that, I was trying to at least, because when it's CG, you can get locked into stuff. You can get locked into like, you do some sort of previs of a thing, and then everyone gets locked into what that previs is, and then stuff can be really stiff and stale. And I just didn't want those scenes to kind of like feel like they have a little more life. So I wanted, I just wanted a little bit more like organic kind of moment to moment stuff that would happen. And fortunately I had a team of actors and crew that really embraced that and were willing to do, to try different things, to try what was not the way people normally do stuff. And I think that really helped those scenes kind of lift off the screen a little bit.
Okay, so Chris, Craig, unless you have another question,
Yeah.
then we move to the students and then we can come back. But if you have something you really, really want to ask, we can do it.
I have one more question. I'm coming from an animatronic creature background myself. It's always a big concern of mine to create a believable creature that hits all the marks in terms of like the physical and the emotional and the psychological functions of the movies. And so when you were what were the criteria and considerations for you when you were creating these creatures for the Tomorrow War? What were your concerns with those and making sure that they hit the mark for you?
Yeah, my first concern was they shouldn't look like Alien or Predator. So that was probably the first note that I said to the designers, like, please don't make this look like Alien or Predator. Please, let's try to do something as rich. And the problem is that we all know and love those movies so much, and maybe you could throw in like Independence Day or something else, like there's like 3 or 4, designs that are, that are just like indelibly, imprinted on our brains. And everybody who got in, especially these days, everyone who got into designing and creating stuff was so influenced by those things that they can't help sort of like, designing in that idiom a little bit. So you have to kind of like, so I was like, just please guys, don't try as much as humanly possible to not give me something that looks like Alien or Predator. So that was number one. But I think you almost have to deal with everyone kind of like their actors, right? Like if I'm talking to an animator, I'm talking to an animator like he's the actor or she's the actor. I'm talking to the designers like he or she is he's the actor. So I'm talking in terms of character. So I wanted them to feel ancient. So they needed to look and feel ancient. So texture, and kind of just anything that could make them feel old. I needed them to feel hungry, like they had an insatiable appetite that would never be filled. So there was a lot of talk around that and around their limbs and around their bellies and that sort of thing. I wanted them to have a feral intelligence. I wanted them to feel like they had it, whether the audience understood what they were communicating was not as important as understanding that they were communicating with each other and that they could run plays, to get their prey. So I wanted them to kind of feel like wolves or coyotes. So that was the thing, was like, can we make them feel like wolves or coyotes, in that they're pack oriented, that they run a play to go get their prey, that they communicate in ways that they they were armored up. That was another thing. I wanted them some armor, and I also the script had zero. The script did not have any description. I think the script said they were white and they have spikes on them, which is why they call them white spikes. And so I knew that they needed to have some kind of offensive weapon. So I said, if they can have something that shoots somehow, let's do that also, because I wanted them to at least, because otherwise I'm gonna understand how they took over the world. Like that was one of the things that I was really important. So Ken, who designed the white spikes ultimately, and Spectral, who did the
Spectral,
Spectral, they're great. They're awesome.
Yeah.
So they did the animatronic white spikes that we had, the photo white spikes, the dummy heads, all that stuff that I needed to be able to help the actors, help the team, help the camera people, help everybody, help lighting, because we would like that stuff too. So that when we went back to Weta and the other teams that built the CG versions of it, that we had all of that information. We had that lighting information. We had what the texture looked like under the different lighting situations and that kind of thing. And we used some of the animatronics, but there's one shot in particular that I really wanted to use, but we kind of cut we did like a scene that was mostly animatronic. It would have been almost entirely animatronic, but we had to cut that scene. But there is, if you in the movie, there are the ones that Spectral created are in the movie all over the place, but it's just where to spot them. But yeah.
Okay, let's open up to students, please. Mike, who do we have?
Oh, we have a question here from Sam. Sam is a BFA student in LA. Sam, we've enabled you to unmute yourself. What's your question for Chris?
Thank you. Hi, Chris. Appreciate you taking the time. My first question here is, what are some of the main storytelling differences that one should take into account between like live action filmmaking and animation? And I know you kind of already talked about like the little differences, but specifically when it comes to storytelling, would you say that there are some core differences that you take into account?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I think there's an answer. There's probably like a very sort of animation is a animation isn't a genre. Animation is a way of getting things done, and you should be able to create any kind of movie, any kind of story in animation. Whether you could do pick your Reservoir Dogs or Pulp Fiction. You should be able to make anything in animation. There's an economic reason why people don't do that, and that's because any animation is incredibly expensive. So they try to do stories that are going to appeal to the broadest audience possible. So they're not going to greenlight. That's why if David Fincher and Tim Miller had a hard time making Heavy Metal as a movie, because it's just expensive. And I think they probably turned it into Love and Robots and or was Love, Sex and Robots or whatever it's called. But it's incredibly expensive, and so people are not financially motivated to make animation that doesn't sort of fit into a very that's the problem. That's why you see those memes that are just like, here's every design from a DreamWorks movie, just single them out, but here's they all kind of look the same, because that's the way that that's the way it fits into the whoever decided that that's what audiences want, or is the most appealing, whatever focus group they're turning to or whatever. There's very few people who are really incentivized to go and try something, but animation, you can do anything. There are scripts that are brilliant scripts that you would think would that are budgetarily unfilmable from a live action standpoint, that if people I wish that people would go, okay, we can't do this live action, so let's try it in animation. But I don't think that, because anything you do in animation is automatically going to cost a certain amount of money. It's just, no matter what no matter what is on screen, whether it's just, you could do a black box theater thing, and it would still be the most expensive thing. It's still be like, 10 times more expensive than if you just shot it, live action, 100 times probably. So I think I hope that's answering your question, because that's sort of maybe that's I don't know, does that answer your question? Is that close?
No, for sure it does, because I mean, just hearing that, you can approach it in a similar way, in terms of you can kind of take your ideas from either animation to live action or vice versa is good to hear, because yeah, I guess there are some times where I'm like, would this really work in animation? Maybe not. Would this really work live action? If it's an animation idea. But yeah, of course, the idea of it being so much more expensive rings true. So yeah, thanks. I appreciate it.
It's just how you pitch it to the studio. I mean, I think that at the end of the day, if you can find a way to make it appealing to the studio, there's no reason why they can't make anything. And people, like even with that Disney thing, where they all flirt with something that's not in their brand all the time. They just never pull the trigger. I mean, Disney doesn't do animated stuff. They don't do it. But that show was a straight up anime show, and they just they flirt with it all the time. But it's getting them to pull the trigger, and that's the key. If you can figure that out, then
Perfect. Thank you.
Sure.
Mike, who else?
We have a question here from Kaiman Murrain, an animation student in LA. Kaiman, we've enabled you to unmute yourself. What is your question for Chris?
Hello, it's really nice to meet you. Sorry, I'm a little bit frozen up right now, because I'm really a huge fan of stop motion animation in particular, and I love to do stop motion animation with Legos. So this is like a huge benefit, not just to me, but for my career in the future. So I really do appreciate you taking time to speak to us. My question was just that what inspired you to create the theme for the Lego Batman movie, and also what inspired you to make the movie as a whole? What really led you into it? Was there any motives or anything from your past, anything that just got you just kind of allowed the film to come passionately from the heart?
Yeah. Besides being a huge Batman fan, I'm always looking for ways to tell a story about, because I think that, movies that are emotional or have really honest emotions underneath them are my favorite kinds of movies. And you can do that in any genre. You can do that, you can do that in a science fiction movie. You can do that in a horror movie. You can do that in, gangster movie or whatever. And Batman being one of the most popular characters in the world, and being able to talk about, sort of the fear of a boy who's been abandoned, or feels abandonment, learning to reach out to other people again, was something that was really important to me. And so by being able to use Batman to tell that story, and to really try to tell a Batman centric story, because I would probably argue that the Nolan movies probably are the closest thing to just telling a straight Batman. The Batman is the central character, but a lot of the depictions of Batman in general in movies were more about villains and more about plots and things like that. And I was just hoping to try to make this theme, this emotional idea, try to tell a story using Batman, and to try to make it the most Batman movie, the most thing that's about Batman and solving Batman's real problem, which movies don't really. There's no upside to a studio that wants to make sequels and things like that to have Batman try to solve his problem. There's not a lot of but I knew that in this movie we could at least make an attempt to do that. That this was actually a a movie that you could sort of like solve Batman's or try to solve Batman's one problem. That appealed to me because, like I said, it's not something you can do in any movie. No one's going to go, yes, let's fix Batman so at the end of the movie Batman doesn't have to be Batman anymore. They're not interested in hearing that pitch.
Okay, Mike, who's next?
We have a question here from Lyubov Unitska from our online campus. Lyubov, we've enabled you to unmute yourself. What is your question for Chris?
Hello, hello.
Hey, how you doing?
Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yep.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Hi. Good evening, sir. I saw your movie also, like Tomorrow's War, and it is really amazing. So I wanted to check with you, like, because I'm still deciding if I will go into filmmaking. I'm just really doubt that I have that skills, you know. And as you have been in filmmaking industry from like your whole entire life, I wanted to check which specific skills and, you know, like qualities beginners should have to become a good filmmaker, not just a filmmaker, but good one.
Yeah, I mean, well, first off, don't ever doubt your skills because it's a learning, everything's a learning process. Everything is a growth process, right? Like you may not have some skill in some area right now today, but that doesn't mean you can't figure out a way to achieve it and get it, you know, like you will get the experience. I would try to, you know, I think it's important to be a good communicator, try to learn how to communicate your ideas to, you know, and make mistakes, you know, make as many mistakes as you possibly can. That's the Pixar thing. It's like fail fast. Like that's what Pixar, that's how they look at their process. Like fail as fast as you can. So make as many mistakes as you can, learn and shoot stuff. Learn what kind of filmmaker you are today. Learn the kinds of things that interest you and what you're good at, because you may be good at you might think you're the funniest person in the world, and then you start to shoot something and then you realize, oh my gosh, I'm not very funny, but I'm really good with actors, or I'm really good with an action scene, I'm really good with you know music, or whatever it is, or you know your eye is a beautiful eye and you can shoot, you know, really amazing things. So you know, I would you know, I would try, you know, have a real critical, you know, self-assessment of where you're at right now. Make something so that you can see what you're actually good at, and then endeavor to try to find, you know, ways that you can improve on the stuff that you feel like you want to improve on. You know, if you want to be, you know, a comedian, you know, make funny movies and that sort of thing, then you're gonna, and if you're not, then should learn what it is that makes people laugh and try to do that. Or try to, you know, if again your thing is you're actually really great with actors and you know you're really dramatic director, you can also head in that direction too, and double down on that and continue to grow and find the material or write the material that's the thing that is going to, you know, showcase the stuff that you can do. And I think it's, you know, so communication and, you know, kind of like, you know, figure out what kind of filmmaker you want to be. And then it's trying to work on stuff with people. Try to do as many things as you can with other people so that you can learn how a set works, learn how, you know, learn how to deal with people, learn how to communicate with people. Because communicating your ideas is huge in any part of filmmaking, whether you're a DP or a producer or a director or a writer or an editor. It's all about knowing how to communicate. And you're right. And communication doesn't also have to be, you can, you know, I'm not the most verbal person in the world, but I can take my phone and I can shoot something. I can shoot toys. I can shoot, you know, people. I can grab my friends and line them up and make little storyboards. When I'm doing a location scout, I'm grabbing everybody in the crew and I'm having them stand in areas and I'm taking photos. I'm using my phone. I'm using my camera. You know, I'm trying to, you know, line up shots so that I can communicate to people about what we're going to accomplish later. And again, checking my assumptions and like, oh yeah, that's, you know, that angle that I thought was good is not as good as the one that I did over here. So that's the thing that we should do. And as many times as you can get yourself to try to make the movie in your head or on your phone or in any other way, like try to make the movie so that you can, before you because it's the minute that you set foot on set, everything's expensive. There's a million people, even if you're doing it low budget, you're still, or no budget, you're going to burn cash or something, or you're not going to be able to come back to that location or whatever it is. So the more that you arm yourself with knowledge now, and you can check your assumptions and rewrite the movie and over until it's the best version of that thing. Do anything you can. So I would try to do anything that would pre-visualize the movie for yourself, so that you can then go off on the shoot day. You know exactly what you need to get through the day, and again, especially in case something goes wrong, so that the weather's going to change, the actor's not going to show up, the costume's not going to work, or whatever the thing is. You are so prepared that none of that stuff affects you at all. You want to be the most in control of yourself emotionally and mentally as humanly possible when you're on set, so that you can just go, all right, cool. That doesn't work. Great. We're going to figure this out. We're going to go over here. We're going to do this, or here's how we're going to make that thing work, or whatever. Because you are so knowledgeable about the scene and all the things that you need, and you've blocked all these other scenarios out, and you've thought this through a million different ways, that you can just pivot constantly. Because that's what live action, if you're on set, you're pivoting all the time. The actor's not, you'd be surprised who doesn't show up knowing their lines. You would blow your mind. It would blow your mind who doesn't know their lines when they show up on set. Crazy, but it happens all the time. And you have to figure out, okay, cool. We're going to get through this and we're going to figure it out. So yeah, be as prepared as humanly possible. Chris Pratt always says preparation is a separation. Preparation is the thing that separates you from everybody else. And I was like that. So I should have just stole that from Pratt and said that was my line, but he got to give credit where credit's due.
He stole it from somebody else.
He stole it from someone else for sure.
We have another question that was submitted by our LA student, Sam. Sam asks if you have any tips or tricks for, and I'm sorry, I just lost the question. Any tips or tricks to successfully network your ideas and scripts as a writer and director?
Yeah. I mean, I would try to get an agent or a manager if you can, if that's that may be still a ways off. There are industry things where people get together. There are ceremonies, there's guild things for different guilds and stuff like that. It's hard. It's not easy. But you can talk to producers. You can call up producers. You can pitch things, stuff to people. But it really, you really should try to get an agent or manager because it will make your life way easier. It's still gonna be hard, but it's gonna be easier because unfortunately, people won't read stuff unless you're with an agent. They won't. They can't. They're literally not allowed to read anything because it just puts everybody in a place where they are legally vulnerable. If they're being handed something at a Comic-Con or something like that, you know what I mean? So let people get to know you. One thing I think does work is sort of just going on like an informational interview with people, like calling up people that you like, that you admire, people that you think you could work with, and just saying, hey, I'm new to the business. I don't know anything. Can I take you out to lunch and pick your brain for an hour? That'll work with some people. People will do that. I wouldn't pitch your idea necessarily at that thing, but I would talk about the kind of filmmaker you want to be. I would get to know them because you just never know from a networking standpoint where somebody's going to go, oh, hey, I met this person over lunch. They seemed interesting. They're good at this. You might want to talk to them. They might put you together with somebody. That's one thing, but meeting people, being out here in Los Angeles is obviously really helpful because there's screenings, there's functions, there's all sorts of things where you can meet people. I mean, the people come up and talk to me, when they see me at a premiere, they see me at something, so and I've talked to people, I've, done all that stuff. So it can happen, but it's, everyone's, you can't, for every 5 people that you try, you'll get one person to talk to you.
Thank you so much. We do have one last question from Patrick Kroll from our New York City campus. Patrick, we've enabled you to unmute yourself. What is your question for Chris?
What is it that you're planning to do next in your career?
The next thing, I'm working on a movie called Renfield right now. Renfield's it's a movie at Universal. It's about Dracula's assistant. He's it's a movie about codependency and toxic relationships at the end of the day. But yeah, that's what I'm working on. Nick Holt is going to play Renfield, and we're going to shoot it in New Orleans, and yeah, that's what I'm prepping right now.
Thank you.
What about the movie with Sandra Bullock?
We're still waiting for a script to come in on that. So yeah, Reborn. It's based on a Mark Miller graphic novel. So we're still waiting for the script to come in. But yeah, it'll be Sandra Bullock, kind of in a sci-fi fantasy movie for Netflix. I like shooting practical locations in general. This one will not be practical. Look, this will be a crazy, insane. There'll be some practical locations, but mostly like a lot of green screen and that sort of thing. So it'll be a lot different than some of the other things. But yeah, it's a wild. It's sort of about grief and death, but a lot more, but funny and fun. The fun death. Grief and death.
What about Johnny Quest?
Johnny Quest, we just that's amazing. We just turned in a script to the producers, and we're getting some feedback. It's been a process, we've got some really good writers on it right now who are killing it. It's Johnny Quest is something I liked a lot as a kid. Johnny Quest and Nightwing were the two things that I'm really hoping to do as soon as I can get the studios to get behind those movies. Yeah,
cool.
I can't wait to do that.
So Chris, you're a very busy person. You have so many things going, and yet you agreed to come and share your experience and your wisdom to the students and give them advice and really try to help them out. And I cannot tell you how grateful we are that you took time out of your busy schedule to come and help those budding students. And maybe one day you'll work together.
Mm-hmm. Presumably, yes. Presumably we will. Yes.
It's really because, unless they meet a person that is actually doing it, in the industry on a regular basis and can guide them a little bit, it's, it gets sometimes a little fuzzy. So I really, and I think everybody learns from the process, I'm sure that Craig heard something that he liked. I heard something that I didn't before. So I think it's like a learning experience for everybody. And I can't thank you for coming. And I wish you success in all your endeavors. And we love your movies. So, we're going to follow you. And we'll
thank you.
Something nice on social media for you.
Well, thank you. When I was a kid, I watched them shoot Ferris Bueller's Day Off, the parade scene, and I walked kind of behind the scenes in John Hughes. This is before I obviously worked on Uncle Buck, but I asked him about what it took to be a filmmaker, and he was very kind to sit there and answer my questions and that kind of thing, and I'm just like everybody, all of your students. I was that person, I was that person who went to film school and studied and loved movies and wanted to make movies. It's, it is a very achievable goal. It's going to be hard and it's not easy, but you will, if you want it, you will figure out a way to get it. And I will say that in Los Angeles and Hollywood, every dog has its day. You will get an opportunity. You'll get a couple bites at the apple to try to do the thing that you want to do. It's within your grasp. It's going to be hard work, but it's worth it in the long run. So
Thank you very much.
Thank
course.
you.
Much for coming.
nice meeting all of you.
Appreciate it and enjoyed it.